Straight wall cartridge versus slug gun. We're going to shoot these out to 200 yards, shoot it into ballistic gelatin, and ultimately give you the information to make the best choice for your hunting needs. So over the last several years, straight wall cartridges have gained a lot of attention. A lot of the regulations have changed in the Midwest, where you used to be regulated to shoot 12 gauge or 20 gauge slugs. Now in the same season, Illinois, Ohio, states like that, now you can shoot a straight wall cartridge. Ballistically, there are some advantages, especially if you're going to shoot out to 200 yards. These are not meant to be 300 or 400 yard cartridges. And you do have a little bit of reduction in recoil, mainly because the bullet weighs less. So in the 400, this weighs 215 grains. Right here in the Remington AccuTip, this weighs 260 grains. So automatically, you're going to have more recoil in the 20 gauge slug versus this 400 Legend. Now, you have 350 Legend, 360 Buckhammer, 400 Legend, you have 45-70, so there's a lot of variation in straight wall cartridges. The 400 Legend is getting all the attention right now. It's kind of that hybrid round of good velocity, good accuracy, long range performance, not a lot of recoil. So 45-70, heavier on the recoil, definitely better on kinetic energy. 350 Legend, more on lower recoil, easier to handle, superiorly accurate, but probably not something you're going to shoot at the longer ranges. Typically, you're going to have better accuracy in a straight wall cartridge than a slug gun, but a lot of that is slug dependent and gun dependent. So you find the right combination, you can shoot some superior groups out to 200 yards with a slug gun, but typically not as easy as you can with a straight wall cartridge. Another big factor is price. One box of slugs. Okay, now these are premier slugs, top of the line. Obviously, there's some slugs at better price point. Is the same price as 20 rounds of these Winchester PowerPoints here. 5 shots versus 20 shots. So economically, there's a big difference. Now, some state laws, let's say Illinois, if you use a straight wall cartridge, you have to use a single shot rifle like the Encore. So you don't have a follow-up shot. Whereas if you do shoot a 12 or 20 gauge slug, you do have extra shots, extra firepower. You're doing a deer drive or what have you. You have the ability of a quick follow-up shot. So there's a lot of things that go into choice between the two. But have you ever wondered exactly what the bullet looks like inside the slug? Well, let's go ahead and cut this open and show you the difference in the projectiles before we get to shooting. In a 400 Legend or straight wall cartridge, you're driving off the bullet itself. So when the cartridge leaves the casing, it's engaging in the rifling itself as opposed to a piece of plastic. So this is what you have. So this is your sabot, just like a muzzleloader would have a sabot, obviously. So when this comes out the bore, these petals flare like this. Okay, and then there's your projectile. So when this comes out, the bullet separates. So this is what drives down your bore. So the plastic grabs a hold of the bullet like this, and then obviously it rotates down the bore. So these tolerances are super critical, and that's why the harmonics of the barrel, the size of the chamber, all affect the accuracy, because you're not driving off of the actual bullet itself. You're not driving off of that copper core right there. So there is your difference in projectile. So we'll go ahead and shoot a couple shots at 100 yards and walk it out to 200 and show you the difference in accuracy and bullet drop between the slug and the 400 Legend. All right, let's shoot a 3-shot group. See how well she performs. Well, about what I expected. About an 1.5 inch, 1.75 inch group. Basically right on target. The gun shoots well. For a slug gun, it doesn't recoil too badly. Now you could see the gun jump a little bit. I definitely lose the target when I shoot because of the recoil, but it is certainly manageable being a 20 gauge. Most people would never complain with an 1.5 inch group at 100, but this is where it separates a 100-yard gun from a 200-yard gun. So we go to 200, does that 1.5 inch group go to 4 or 5 inches, or does it stay around the 3-inch mark? And of course, what is the bullet drop going to be? But all day long, I'll take an 1.5 inch group with a slug gun. Now let's swap out guns, shoot the 400 Legend here, and see if we can't tighten the group up. So a few advantages of shooting a straight wall cartridge, especially a 400 Legend. The recoil should be less, so you should be able to see this on how the gun jumps. You do have the ability to shoot a suppressor, which is nice. So this is threaded. I didn't bring a can today, but you do have the ability to put your suppressor on here. Now the thread size is larger. For those of you who don't know, that when you get over 30 caliber, according to Sammy's spec, you do have a larger thread size because you have a bigger bore size. You have a lighter bullet, which does create less recoil, but you're driving the bullet off the copper jacket, and that's the big thing. You don't have a sabot, so you should have superior accuracy at 100 yards and further with the 400 Legend. And then of course it is more aerodynamic, as we've shown you here, just in the shape and size of the projectile. So let's go ahead and make sure this is sighted in at 100 yards, and let's see if this group's better than the slug gun. Fire in the hole. Group size is very similar. Possibly edged it out a little bit with the 400 Legend, but be honest with you, both the slug gun and the 400 Legend shot similar, which is what you'd expect. These aren't, 308s, they aren't 300 Win Mag rounds. These are meant for short range shooting. So right now it's a toss-up. We'll definitely, when we go to 200 yards, we'll be able to see the difference in trajectory, but the big difference is recoil. The 400 Legend for sure recoiled less, and primarily that's because this is only a 215 grain bullet versus a 260 grain bullet. So right now, tie ball game at 100 yards. Let's move it to 2. Okay, we moved the target to 200 yards. Put a clean piece of paper up. Now I'm expecting this is going to drop, probably 8 or 9 inches. And expect the group to open up a little bit, but we'll see. About what I expected. One that went a little bit higher, which is not, untypical for a sabot to fly a little bit, but the overall group size is still pretty good. I mean, it's 4 inches. I mean, it definitely kill a deer 200 yards. And I'm right at the bottom of the paper. So before I was at the top of the paper. And literally, we didn't adjust the scope at all, and it just dropped down probably in that 8 or 9 inch range that we were talking about, and the group size is about there. Will it kill a deer? All day long. So no issue right now shooting this gun out to 200 yards. You're either going to have a CDS system on this loophole and turn the turret, or you're going to have a reticle inside to compensate for range, or sight your gun in 2 inches high at 100 and kind of split the difference between the two, because you would have gone under the deer here if you just kept the same point of aim. Now, if you held on the spine there, knowing it was 200 yards, you would have dropped it right in the boiler room. All right, now we're going to shoot 3 shots, 200 yards, the 400 Legend. I'm going to aim at the top diamond, and it should hit somewhere close to the bottom right diamond. So group size definitely better. I would say, we're in that probably 2 to 3 inch range as opposed to 4 to 5 inches with the slug. Trajectory definitely better. We had, I would say, 5 inches of drop versus 8 or 9 inches of drop. So that's pretty significant. Now, energy wise, we're going to shoot some ballistic gelatin next. At 200 yards, both are going to perform well, kill deer well. It all really comes down to how your gun shoots at 200 yards and how you're compensating for that bullet drop, because there's a big difference between 5 inches of bullet drop and 8 or 9 inches of bullet drop, whether you have to compensate or not compensate. So either way, you're going to need a turret adjustment or a reticle adjustment to shoot out to 200 yards on the 400 Legend or the slug gun. So now let's pivot over to energy and see which one has better knockdown power. All right, the ballistics gelatin test. So we know trajectory-wise, the 400 Legend and accuracy-wise edges out the slug gun. Not that dramatic. At 100, certainly at 200, a little bit more. But I'm willing to bet that this 260 grain bullet out of the slug gun is going to show a lot more wound channel devastation here in the ballistic gel. So let's see if it works that way. Wow. Knocked the gelatin block clear off the bench. Let's walk down and take a look at it. So you can see here we went through one block. In fact, let's go ahead and cut this out. This is right there. I went through 16 inches, about 17 inches of penetration. Perfect mushroom. Look at that. That really pancaked well. Perfect expansion. I bet you if we weigh that, it's darn near 90-some%. So that is impressive. And then that's what your wound channel looks like right there. So this was your entrance here as I flipped it around. So it came in here, dumped all of its energy probably in half the block, so about 8 inches. And then from there, you had very little trauma. So this is definitely all your energy dropped inside the wound cavity right there and then continue to pass through. There's not a whitetail out there that's more than 16 inches in depth. Whitetails, bear, anything medium-sized game, certainly within, 100, 150 yards, this slug right here is absolutely devastating. Now let's see how the 400 Legend compares to this. Next up, the 400 Legend. I'll be honest, this is going to be a tall test for this caliber. 400 Legend versus gel block. All right, flip the block off, not as violently as the slug. It stood it up and it kind of rolled off the table. So, and I do not see an exit hole here in the other block, so I think it's all contained within that first 16 inches. So here's your difference. The bottom is your slug. So you can see it dumped everything in the first half of the block, about 8 inches, and then just created a pass through. Here you had the same devastation. It did carry about 3 or 4 inches longer into the wound channel. Not that it's necessary because you would have exited the animal already. And then slightly more penetration. So there's where the slug ended up. If you remember, the slug for the slug gun ended right here. So you've got about 3 inches more penetration out of the 400 Legend. Good weight retention. So here's your slug for comparison. Now remember, this is 260 grains, 45 caliber. This is 40 caliber at 215. So this will be bigger just because it's a bigger slug to start with. But between the two, perfect performance. A little bit more penetration as I expected with the 400 Legend, about 3 inches. But your wound channel between the two is literally almost identical. A little bit further trauma with the 400 Legend, but both of them dumped the majority of their energy within the first 8 inches, which is what you want. Now you can start to understand why these Midwest states, the Illinois, the Ohio's, the Iowas, they're allowing straight wall cartridges, because this is your slug performance. And when you look at it ballistically and you look at it from a devastation or wound channel, these are almost identical. So which one do you choose? It really comes down to which gun you want to carry in the field. Shotgun is more versatile. Ammunition is a little bit more expensive. 400 Legend, you can hand load for this. You can put a suppressor on it, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility. But at the end of the day, it's a toss-up. Both is going to kill a deer at the 200 yards.